To what? Oh, yeah, we'll get started here shortly as soon as she comes back. Have her run a little maintenance errand for us.
I didn't put any sunblocks out. Oh, imagine you can appreciate why I absolutely.
That's never fun.
Poor decision. I realized the next day. It's really cloudy. It doesn't really matter. Luckily, I didn't make fun of my buddy for he also got a hat on.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we will call to order Board of Zoning Appeals for April 10th, 2023. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the March 27th, 2023 meeting.
Chairman, I recommend approval of the minutes from March 27th, 2023.
Second. Motion by Mr. Peterson, by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. We have continuance requests for 46 and 47. Is that correct?
Correct, Mr. Chairman. Russell Brown here for Racetrack, and we would request that matter be continued to your May 8th hearing.
May 8th. Okay. Can I have a motion to move to May 8th? Motion by Mr. Moll, second by Mr. King to move those two dockets to the May 8th meeting. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. So we will see you on the 8th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Russell. Findings of fact, BZA 2023-009, the development standards variance for Bill Anderson on behalf of Greenwood Estates.
Chairman, in consideration of the statutory criteria, I move that we adopt the written findings of fact as presented, incorporating the evidence submitted into the record as our final decision and final action for variance petition number BZA 2023-009.
Motion by Mr. Peters, second by Mr. Moll. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. Oh, we have old business. We've already continued 2023-046 and 2023-047. So that brings us to BZA 2023-010. Petitioner Chris Magnus for relief from Unified Development Ordinance for single-family residential building design standards. All those wishing to present, please stand and be sworn in. Everything's in order because we heard this last time, so.
Correct.
Okay.
Testimony to constitute the best of your knowledge. Yeah.
And the name and address for the record.
It's Chris Magnus, 1287 South Honey Creek Road.
Mr. Magnus, you briefly tell us again why you're here. And then we'll go from there.
So I would like to use pre-finished metal siding as an exterior facade for my home as opposed to vinyl siding or fiber cement, something like that. But it's currently not in development standards as a approved.
Okay, and I did watch the testimony from 2 weeks ago, so I am up to speed. on what was heard. And Mr. Foster, we do not need to go back through all that
No, sir.
testimony then? Okay, so do we open any kind of public hearing again, or?
I guess you can, open the public hearing, then open the questions for the board to ask.
Okay,
Questions.
so we'll open the public hearing. I guess, Mr. Magnus, if there's anything additional you want to add since last time?
So I did print some additional information.
Should be ready to go on the.
I printed some of these.
Yeah, if you want to.
Just have some photos and that kind of thing, right? So you can see maybe a little bit more of my explanation from last time.
Sounds like he can also do it on the screen. if we go.
I
Thanks, sir. Have that to share.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, last week.
Are we? Okay.
And while we're pulling it up, maybe we can, you guys can continue and we'll get the PowerPoint caught up with the PDF that you have.
Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah, so I gave all my copies out, but
We're good.
you know, you can see kind of what it is. I mean, I put some references of locations directly across the street. So there's a home slash garage right directly across the street from where the new proposed structure would be. I think maybe the second or third page, right?
Yep.
Kind of proposed house. Location there in blue and then the yellow box, right? As you can see, literally 100 yards away across the street. The left portion of that home, right? Same thing is metal siding, metal trim. Just like what I'm looking at doing. The orange box is on the same property. It is their garage, but same finish, right? All of that. Then there was my home at 1287 there, Mayfield Road. Just I was trying to give you just a visual of the metal siding, right? Exactly what that looks like with some stone on the bottom. That's what I proposed.
So the house, I'll wait, I'll hold my questions till the end. Go ahead.
Okay, and then the next two pictures were just internet pictures, you know, for example, kind of exactly what I'm looking at, with stone wainscoting on the front, and then the metal siding on the other side.
Okay.
So,
I'll let them continue here. Are you just trying to pull up this presentation?
Yes.
Are we all good? I think we're probably okay. Anyone else have anything to add? Does staff have anything to add?
I
we have any specific additional questions to address, I would just remind you that we're not, we're dealing with the aesthetics of the building, the materials that have been approved by the Unified Development Ordinance. It is not so much the structural quality of the building. That would be handled by our building department in the review and inspections, ensuring that it meets all of Indiana State Code, building and fire codes and rules. That was just one thing I'd heard in the testimony from watching it last week. This is more of the approved list, the aesthetics, the quality, the style that Greenwood is looking for.
Anything else? If not, I'll close the public hearing. I do have some questions. So you referenced the house on Honey Creek Road, which I'm very familiar with. That does not look like steel siding to me.
The house itself is not, but the barn is what's in the picture,
Yes.
right? With the stone around the.
So it's just colored to match
Yeah,
the
there's that.
house
I
and
mean, I painted the house to match the barn color, right? So that whole thing.
okay.
would match.
And then the house across on Curry, is that the house itself is or is not the steel siding? Or is it just the barn itself?
There is a, I'm gonna call it a yellowish colored vinyl sided home there. that will, right directly next to it, so that would be to the left of the picture which you can see in front of that. It's in
Yes.
between those two pictures is where that house sits.
Okay,
But this actually is a dwelling and garage as well as metal siding.
okay. 'Cause that's my only, I know the testimony last time, and that was my question as well as I read through this, is there's a difference between the siding on a barn and a structure used for storage and the siding that we approve for an actual dwelling. So I think that's important to note. I see you have the comparisons of metal siding versus vinyl siding, which vinyl siding would be approved, would be able to be used without a variance, correct?
We require a certain gauge of vinyls, and then with that, there are 3 different paths that you can take when developing a residential home in Greenwood. Each of those paths is slightly different in how the material is, what material is requested. With that, we likely need to have a masonry wainscot, 36-inch tall wainscot on the front of the building or any side that's facing a public street. So it depends on what path you choose to go with. But some of the paths do allow for a higher quality vinyl.
Okay. And then fiber cement is allowable?
Yes.
It is.
Okay. And then you show a couple designs, internet examples that have stone in addition to the steel siding. Is that your intent?
Correct. Yeah, on the original submission documents, there were some renderings that I had labeled, they didn't show this stuff, but I had labeled on there, but the bottom way still needs to be spent.
Yep, okay. See that. So that would meet the wainscot requirement that you,
Correct, that would meet the wainscot requirement. He was picking a path that would require, in talking with staff, the least amount of dimensional variances. That was one of the things he was adding to it to avoid another variance.
okay. Like we heard in the testimony last time and the staff report as well, I do think it's a struggle for me to see the practical difficulties in sticking to what the ordinance is requesting from a material standpoint. So I guess I'd like maybe a little more from you on why the steel versus something that is allowable, what,
So in a couple of reasons, right? So I think this is maybe how we got off on the structural piece last time is the way that the whole barn is constructed, right? That's this type of a posted beam construction home.
Yep.
Right, you have a post every 8 feet, then you have a horizontal purlin, right, every 2 feet considered, and that's what you're siding. Nails to it, right?
attached to you?
So with a vinyl siding or something like that, then it would need to be more of a traditional frame, I guess. You know, to be able to fasten every 16 inches, like a vinyl siding would, or fiber cement or something like that. So that's a little bit of the practical difficulty part, I guess, where that comes through, right?
Yep.
Structure. But then also, I mean, it's aesthetic for me as well. I mean, this is kind of the look that I was going for, right? Not to mention all the advantages that you get from metal siding as opposed to, you know, vinyl siding. Metal suburban.
And I would agree, I think this would be a much better look than the vinyl siding, but what about compared to the fiber cement siding?
So same kind of thing there, right? So the fiber cement siding would require more structure, you know, from a nailing standpoint. And then also from a maintenance standpoint, you have the same thing, you have caulking, you have chipping and cracking and sealing, all of that, right? Fiber cement. That's kind of the beauty of the metal, and that's why it's used so much on bars and things that people don't have to deal with, right? So you have to do things.
So I guess that leaves my question to staff then. Why do we not have that allowed? What is our concerns about steel versus some of these others that we're okay with it? When this seems like it might be a more durable facade.
Yes, good question. I think part of that is, we have developed a new set of building design standards. It was developed in 2020, October of 2020, of the standards of how we want our new development to look, the different paths that they can take to meet a style that our council voted to approve. And with that, there was some people at the time that were going through the CBO update that worked with stakeholders and had some public hearings, and this is what was settled on for what was the style and the look for residential development in Greenwood. That's really all I can say. I wasn't here during the time of the development. It could be that it's more thought of with an accessory structure, but
So I guess and I know the structure is not in play here, but to some degree, the barn style home is an allowable structure to build for a residential home, correct?
I'm sorry, I did have a preliminary meeting with Kenneth Seal. 100%.
Okay.
There were no issues on their side.
Because I think, to your point, with that style of home, the style of siding makes more sense than it would with a regular constructed 16 on center type home, right?
I will say path number 3 does allow up to 20% to be accent metals per elevation. So there are some paths that allow for decorative or accent pieces to include metal, but it is not approved as like a primary building material for the elevations.
Okay. I think that answers my questions. Any new questions from the board? Then do we need to submit all the evidence in the record again? We need a request to do that, right?
Yes.
sorry, was someone,
No, so.
Oh. I'll take a motion to admit all the evidence in the record.
Chairman, I move that we admit all the evidence presented in regard to this matter, including the notices, receipts, maps, photographs, written documents, petitioner's application and attachments, petitioner's detailed statement of reasons, the staff report prepared by the planning department, certified copies of the Unified Development Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan, testimony of the petitioner, city planning staff, and any remonstrators, and all other exhibits presented, be they oral or written, for consideration by this board in regard to this petition, and to include the testimony of those present this evening.
Motion by Ms. Spears, second by Mr. Moore. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. I'll take a motion on the docket itself.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve request number 1, following condition, final plans shall substantively conform to the existing building elevations depicted in Exhibit C.
Motion by Mr. Moore,
I'll second. So then vote on it.
second by Ms. Peters. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion's deadlocked still with 2-2. So now,
Roll to the May 8th. And we'll have a member for. Yes, May.
we
We'll
will
have
have,
another member then.
okay,
We have a meeting a second meeting in April as well, which
well, we have a new member there.
it is my understanding that plan commission will swear in, will appoint a member to BZA tonight. That is the last I have heard. If that goes wrong, I apologize, but I think we should have a member for our next meeting.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
that would be me.
Oh, excellent. Well, welcome. All right, so we will, pending tonight, let's move it to the next meeting of the
24th
24th.
of April.
If for some reason we're not fully staffed with 5 by then, we'll have to move it to the 8th.
All right, we'll try again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, move to continue, so we don't need to vote on the second. A motion.
Move to continue
Oh.
to
24th.
that's it.
Motion by Mr. King to move to the 24th, second by Mr. Mole. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. All right, new business. BZA 2023-011, Development Standards Variance for 711, 713 Fry Road. Section 1, the first request is side elevation to be fully clouded predominant material of the front elevation. Petitioner requesting materials other than the dominant material on the sides and rear. And then the second request is that all sides of the structure shall be architecturally similar with no blank facades, and the request is for a blank facade on the side wall. Second. Are all the notices and such in order?
They're in order and in our file.
Can I remove the admit copy unified development ordinance into the record, sir?
All those wishing to present, please stand, raise your right hand and be sworn in by the secretary.
Do you swear to tell this perjury? That's not true to the best of your knowledge.
All right, name and address for the record.
My name's Matt Davis, 875 West State Road 144 Franklin.
Jeff Lassiter, 1696 Ashby Drive, Lakewood, Indiana, 46143.
Tell us why you're here.
Excuse me. Basically, a little background of this building. we just inherited this. We've actually got possession of it in the last year, and the bank has had control of it. So the maintenance has been pretty poor. So it's gone downhill. The siding is a very porous concrete block that's allowing water to go through. And we want to put metal siding over that so that we can seal that up and the drywall doesn't get soft inside, and we can remodel the inside of the building. So.
It has an old cinder block that you can't use. Back in the 60s when it was built, they were allowed to use this porous cinder block, but today you can't use it on an exterior wall, and they did, and it just sucks the water inside. We had to take all the drywall off. The east side is empty. We had to take all the drywall off, and it was just black with mold and wet over the years. And we have tried several options. We tried to see what it would cost to have it. It's cracked so bad and so old that it was going to cost us about $40,000 to have it tuck pointed and painted. So we ruled that out. To have it brick, I had a couple of bricklayers come out, and it was going to cost, he said, you're better off to tear down the building. The front of it is brick, the rest of it is just that porous block. So we have blacktop the parking lot, we're trying to improve it. We spent a lot of money on improving it already. We wanted to put steel siding, we looked at aluminum and vinyl, and everybody, the contractor says, there's no way you want to put that on there. So this steel siding, the building next to it has steel siding. The Patriots budget has this steel siding. It's a commercial grade. Picture of it, presentation there.
Do you have your answers to the statutory criteria?
Yes.
We'll go through those, and I believe, if I recall, the answers are the same for both.
Yeah, I mean, basically it's the same. I mean, I didn't know what other answer to put. I mean, it's basically the same.
Yeah.
Same answer.
So we'll go through one time instead of
Okay.
twice, and these answers will apply to both of the requests that you have in, if that's okay. So number one, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because.
Okay, siding is safe and will improve the appearance of the building. The siding is very similar to other commercial buildings nearby. The current cement block siding is very porous and leaking through the walls, causing the drywall inside to fall apart and grow mold. Sealing the leaks will improve both inside and outside appearances and allow for remodeling of the interior.
Number two, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because.
The building needs improvement now. Installing new siding will make the building more eye appealing and well kept to the community. The property that is well kept deters crime. We've already had vandalism in the back of the building, graffiti and attempted break-ins. The siding is very similar, if not the same, to many of the surrounding buildings. This improvement would help increase their surrounding property values.
And number three, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because.
It would be cost prohibitive to brick the sides and the back of the building like the front. The current leaking walls are inhibiting our tenant from improving the 7-Eleven Fry Road portion of the building. The drywall had to be torn out because it was wet all the time. Without a variance, it would be hard to find an affordable repair for the building. It will continue to deteriorate, remain partially vacant, and eventually have to be torn down.
And then number four, the structure is not regulated under Indiana Code 8-21-10-3 for hazard air navigation. Staff, do you want to comment on your findings?
Yes, I do. I would just like to point out financial hardship cannot be taken into consideration when we look at this in our statutory criteria. In general, we agree with the petitioner that it does need to be sealed. We need to get rid of the mold and find a suitable material to cover that. Metal is not the, I guess, preferred material for a repair like this, to put metal over it, but we understand that full brick would likely be too heavy for this already crumbling wall. So what we would recommend with our favorable recommendation is a veneer that looks similar or gives the appearance of the brick on the front elevation.
And is that something you're amenable to?
I didn't hear what he's saying.
I couldn't hear anything what he said.
Veneer?
Like Facing over the steel.
Yes.
Yours was facing over the steel.
Like a brick veneer or a,
We looked into the brick veneer, but that wasn't really practical either. The little thin brick you're talking about,
yes.
we had them come out and give us an estimate and and whatever, but they said that that wouldn't be practical to put on that building. And everybody, I've had half a dozen contractors out there, block, paint contractors and siding contractors, and the steel siding was really the only practical way that anybody that we had come out gave us. Steel siding.
And
And then you can't treat the inside really. We did treat the back in the back room. I had it sandblasted. I had it come in and sandblasted. They put three coats of wainscoting on it, or not wainscoting, of sealer on it. And it still is damp in there. So trying to treat it from the inside, it's just too cracked. The building is, you can see some, I think we had some pictures. The building is just too porous and too cracked to try to seal it from the inside. There's just no way. And it's too cost prohibitive to try to seal it from the outside because of all the cracks and it costs us. I mean, I think you said cost didn't make any difference,
But it's been done before. It's not a permanent fix. It's basically painting it and sealing it from the outside is a temporary.
yeah, it lasts about a year.
Well, like a few years.
Well,
Well, I mean,
they
you'll
told me
be
a couple
back
years.
again.
Right. So I think, Mr. Nelson, you're saying though to put the veneer over the steel siding
No, to use the veneer
instead of the steel siding.
steel siding.
And you realize that this has a flat roof, so the steel siding, we were gonna make like a Z flashing up there that went underneath of the roof and allowed the water to go over the metal siding. But what he's proposing, you're gonna have to come over with like I don't know how that would work so well.
The contractors we had come out said that would be difficult. I mean, you could probably make it work, but it would be very difficult to try to make that. We talked about that, trying to put that veneer on it, but the contractor can come out.
We're basically just trying to make sure it's sealed, and this seems like the most logical way to do so. And with surrounding buildings, having that.
Yeah, it needs something.
And then for variance number 2, staff was favorable. We don't think they should be cutting any more holes into this building for windows or adding anything else to it that might weigh down on the crumbling brick or block.
Okay. Anything else to add before I close and open it to the board?
Oh, sir. No,
Questions or comments, Mr. Moll?
No, I think I'm all right.
Mr. King?
No, I'm good.
Mrs. Peters?
If I'm understanding you right and looking at these pictures, I'm struggling with how you could attach facade to the block that is crumbling.
Well, I mean, there's still enough block that they can attach, they'll put 2x4s.
No, the facade thing,
That they're talking.
The
about.
veneer.
The staff is.
yeah, the veneer, the facade. The fake stuff.
Oh, you're trying to see how you could even attach it, is that,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure.
That
how
was gonna be another problem, but they have to put a lot of ribs in.
I'm struggling with trying to figure out how it would attach because it looks like it's very delicate.
It is pretty delicate. You're right, yeah.
We actually had one section of it fixed at the top.
Yeah, we had to have part of it, we had to have the block person. come
I
in.
just want to make sure I was understanding that correctly because that's what it was looking like to me.
Yeah, the whole building looks like that. It's
Okay.
just deteriorated on the outside. And it seeps, the water seeps into the inside.
It's pretty obvious about that. Yeah. Okay, now I'm good on questions now.
And while I understand that cost cannot be a reason for the practical difficulties when it comes to a pre-existing building that may have to be otherwise torn down and the cost becomes quite exorbitant versus a solution, I think we do need to keep that a little bit in mind. Particularly with someone who's trying to do right here and make this a better building. So that's my only comment. So with that, I'll take a motion to admit all the evidence in the record.
Chairman, I move that we admit all the evidence presented in regard to this matter, including the notices, receipts, maps, photographs, written documents, petitioner's application and attachments, petitioner's detailed statement of reasons, the staff report prepared by the planning department, certified copies of the Unified Development Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan, testimony of the petitioner, city planning staff, and any remonstrators, and all other exhibits presented, be they oral or written, for consideration by this board in regard to this petition, and to include the testimony of those present this evening.
Motion by Ms. Peters, second by Mr. Moll. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. Take a motion on request number 1 for the side elevations to be fully clad in a predominant material of the front elevation. In this case, petitioner requests materials other than the dominant material on the sides and rear of the building.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve this with no conditions.
Second.
Motion by Mr. King, second by Mrs. Peters. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. For request number 2, that all sides of structure shall be architecturally similar with no blank facades. In this case, we have a request for a blank facade on a side wall.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve this with no conditions.
Motion by Mr. King, second by Mr. Moore with no conditions. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. Take a motion to direct the corporation's council to draft written findings of fact.
Mr. Chairman, you consider statutory criteria, move that we direct the Corporations Council's office to draft written findings of fact regarding our decision on the variance request presented in variance petition number BZA 2023-011. Said findings specifically incorporate the staff report and evidence submitted to record for consideration and adoption by the Board of Zoning Appeals as our final decision and final action regarding this petition at our next meeting.
Motion by Mr. Mullin, second by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. You're welcome to proceed. You can work with the staff, but we'll take final action in 2 weeks. You can start moving forward.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good job. All right, next up is BZA 2023-013, a development standards variance from petitioner Jim Hill on behalf of.
1, 2.
Oh, I missed one. Crossed one off too early. Sorry. Thank you. BZA 2023-012, 2871 South State Road 135. Petitioner is Tim Overmeyer on behalf of JC Bank. The request is relief from on-premise sign, building sign, monument signs to allow a reduction of the sign face surrounding, or the sign face surround to 0 feet. All those wishing to present, please stand. Well, before we do that, is everything in order? All the notices and receipts?
Everything's in order and in the file. And I moved to admit a copy of the Unified Development Ordinance into the record, sir.
Thank you. Now, be sworn in by our secretary.
Do you swear under penalty of perjury? Testimony is true to the best of your knowledge. Thank you.
All right, name and address for the record.
Tim Overmeyer, 10625 State Road 10, Argus, Indiana.
Tell us why you're here, Mr. Overmeyer.
What we are doing, would like to do is put an auxiliary sign on the side of the road. For the bank is, we already received a variance for the main sign, and we would like to duplicate that on a much smaller version without an EMC. So what we're asking for is not to have brick on the top and sides. We are going to put a base to match the existing one up front. So both signs are the same.
Okay. And do you have your statutory criteria answers?
I think so. Yeah, pretty simplistic.
Yes. All right, well, we'll go through and get them on the record and make sure you don't want to change anything that was submitted, as it was written. So number 1, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because
The proposed sign is located in a commercially zoned area and will meet the proper setbacks to ensure vehicular visibility.
number 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because.
The adjacent properties are also zoned commercial.
And number 3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because.
The additional structural load of the weight of masonry on top of the sign and stress, and the masonry also limits the overall copy area, so we have to make it smaller. It just would not work properly. We want it to look like the other sign, only a smaller version, and it meets everything else as far as height, size.
Okay. And number 4, the structure is not regulated under Indiana Code 8-21-10-3 for hazard air navigation. Staff looks like you're favorable. Any comments?
No, like it's been mentioned, this will essentially mirror the sign that was approved by the BZA last year without the surround. So we are favorable.
Anything else to add? Close the public hearing. Mr. Wall? Pretty straightforward. Mr. King?
Same as last time.
No problem.
Same here. So, very good. With that, I will take a motion to admit all the evidence into the record.
Chairman, I move that we admit all the evidence presented in regard to this matter, including the notices, receipts, maps, photographs, written documents, petitioner's application and attachments, petitioner's detailed statement of reasons, the staff report prepared by the planning department, certified copies of the Unified Development Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan, testimony of the petitioner, city planning staff, and any remonstrators, and all other exhibits presented, be they oral or written, for consideration by this board in regard to this petition, and to include the testimony of those present this evening.
Motion by Ms. Peters, second by Mr. Hall. Those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. Take a motion on the docket itself.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the request with the condition, the sign shall substantially conform to the renderings depicted in Exhibit D.
Motion by Mr. King, second by Mr. Moll with the one condition as written. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. Take a motion to direct Corporation Council draft written findings of fact.
Mr. Chairman, having considered statutory criteria, move that we direct the Corporation Council's office to draft written findings of fact regarding our decision on the variance request presented in variance petition number BZA 2023-012. The said findings specifically incorporate the staff report and evidence submitted into the record for consideration and adoption by the Board of Zoning Appeals as our final decision and final action regarding this petition at our next meeting.
Motion by Mr. Moll, second by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. Again, we'll take final action. It's a couple weeks, but you're welcome to move forward. So, thank you very much. Thank you. Next up is BZA 2023-013. This time, Development Standards Variance petitioner Jim Hill on behalf of Vista Hills Animal Hospital, requesting relief from two sections of the Unified Development Ordinance. The first one being the front yard setback, wanting to increase the maximum building setback from 50 and 80 feet to 141 feet. And the second one is to allow parking in a front yard. Everyone wishing to present, please stand and be sworn in by our secretary.
Do you swear to tell the perjury? Testimony is true to the best of your knowledge. Thank you.
Before we move forward, are all the receipts and notices and everything in order?
Yep, notices are in order and in our file.
And I move to amend a copy of the Unified Development Ordinance to the record, sir.
Name and address for the record.
Joseph Peck, 546 Leisure Lane, Greenwood, Indiana, 46142.
Tell us why you're here.
Here seeking two variances for a site off of Emerson Avenue for the Vista Hills Animal Hospital. With the expansion to its main building and redoing its parking lot, the planning is requesting us to seek. One of them is the building is being aligned with the existing building, so with the code, it's over the maximum setback. So we need a variance to align with the existing building. And then the existing building has a set parking lot and that's the existing drive that serves the property to the north. So with redoing of the parking lot, we need to maintain the drive lane for easement. And this parking lot, we can't do one row parallel parking. We need to do perpendicular because this building's back a little farther back, so we need perpendicular spots. So that's all we're asking for tonight is those two variances that would allow us to waive.
Okay. Do you have your answers to the statutory criteria?
Sure.
So let's walk through those first for the increasing. Let me check here. Did you have?
We have the setback and the park.
Yeah, so we have separate answers for both.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start with the setback, which is variance
Okay.
number one. Number one, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because.
The variance allows for design and development of the commercial expansion that's complementary to the existing surrounding buildings to allow for the business expansion and growth.
Okay, number two, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because.
The use of the building is not changing the value, but the value will be increased with a lot of improvements.
And number three, the strict application of terms of zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because.
The expansion would not be feasible and would not be able to join the existing structure.
And then the structure is not regulated under Indiana Code 8-21-10-3 for hazard air navigation. That applies to both variances for the record. Number 2, to allow parking in the front yard. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because
Parking lot is private in size for the existing use of the building and will remain an existing access lane to the shared access to the parcel to the north. Also, the layout preserves a portion of the existing asphalt, reduces the cost for additional asphalt infrastructure parking with the side and rear.
Number 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because
The parking is necessary for proposed business expansion and growth would add value to the property.
And number 3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because
One row of parking in the front of the building will not meet the desired required parking count for this type of commercial building. The redesign of the parking to add required parking on the side and rear and reduce frontage parking would add additional asphalt infrastructure costs to the project.
Okay, anything else to add?
That's all.
Okay, I believe we have someone else who wishes to speak, so we'll allow you. And then name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Bill Meyer. I'm an attorney and I represent Don's Legacy 3 LLC. My office is located at 6910 North Shadeland Avenue in Indianapolis, Indiana 46220. Don's Legacy is the owner of the property immediately to the north of the petitioner's property. I have a couple handouts, if I may distribute copies very quickly.
Sure.
And we are here this evening just to point out a couple of items. The request for the building setback should be denied because if you look at the picture that's shown on the document number 1, this shows the entire area of South Emerson Avenue, and the petitioner's property is designated with the red drop. That property is along the entire corridor, the property that sits the farthest away from the property line currently. What petitioner is proposing is to compound the non-compliance by building to the north. A suitable solution would be to build the building expansion immediately to the west of the existing building. Petitioner wants to double the size of the building, double it to the west. That would actually bring the property in compliance with the zoning ordinance instead of compounding non-compliance. Also, an expansion in that direction would eliminate completely the requirement for the second variance. And the second variance should also be denied because as submitted materials, because I reviewed what has been submitted, it doesn't state how many employees are currently in the property or if additional employees will be hired after the building is expanded. So it's impossible to determine if there's sufficient parking spaces as proposed. Also, as proposed on the plans that I've seen, the parking spaces appear to be 18 feet deep and 9 feet wide. I believe that the Unified Development Ordinance requires that the parking spaces be 10 feet wide. If this matter is approved, there are a number of conditions that should be imposed to at least minimize the damage that is caused. Another item that I'd like to propose is that no erosion control plan has been submitted whatsoever. And I would direct your attention to the photos. There's 3 photographs that are numbered number 4. You can see that the petitioner has brought in a large quantity of dirt without permits, without application. He's already begun illegal dumping of dirt on the property. To attempt to mitigate the illegal dumping, he's placed erosion control around one side of the property, only along the west side of the dirt pile. There's no erosion control around the other three sides of the property. I would also like to address your attention to the photograph that is shown with the number 3 on it. For 2 years, this petitioner has had a gravel parking lot that is completely unallowed. No petition, no approval has been sought or obtained for this illegal parking. And so you have a petitioner that comes this evening and requests with unclean hands. I would request that, and I would also submit that the parking as submitted and based on the topographical map that has been submitted, clearly the elevations show that none of the water that is collected from the building expansion downspouts will be collected into the drainage swale or the detention area. And 100% of the water from the property to the west behind the building, in addition to the water that is caught by the downspouts off the roof, will be funneled directly onto the property to the south. Again, because of the elevations, the flow of that water will go directly to the property to the south. And part of the decision criteria is that no harm will be caused to surrounding properties. So again, the drainage as currently proposed will directly negatively affect the property value to the property to the south because of the water that's going to be funneled directly onto that property. The other photographs also just show the items that we are bringing your attention to, but especially number 4 and number 3. And finally, I would just submit, there is no practical difficulty that prevents the petitioner from complying with the Unified Development Ordinance. The variances are being requested. In fact, the petitioner stated at least twice, maybe 3 times, the concern is to save development costs. Financial burden is not the proper basis for granting a variance. There is no practical difficulty other than petitioner wishes to compound a current violation of the ordinance, perhaps it originally grandfathered, but to expand the building in the direction that is requested will compound the violation that could simply be avoided by directing the petitioner to expand the building directly to the west. The requested variances are only to save money and should be denied and will directly harm the property and the value of the property to the south. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. For Mr. Is it Peck? You have 5 minutes rebuttal.
Sure, yeah. Regarding setbacks, like you said, the site was grandfathered in. The site, I'm not sure when it was built. The setbacks met the site design at the time. This was 2 lots. He bought the south lot. The building was built on a smaller lot to the south. So the way it was designed first is because the lot was narrow, so they had to push the building back to get enough parking in front. So now he has bought the vacant lot to the north. We platted it, combined it, so he wants to do expansion to get more frontage along his existing frontage along Emerson. So that would be why we would not want to expand into his existing parking lot, tear out a perfectly good parking lot, just to pave the north lot. So there's no real justification why we could not go north of the building. So parking is the same, the parking lot with the drive lane. He represents the property to the north. His access lane, which is Papa John's, in a court easement, we have to maintain that open. That easement has to stay there. That drive lane has to stay there. So we push the parking lot towards the easement. The parking just, the alignment would not work for the amount of parking that we would need for a doctor's or a vet's office. So that's stone. He's been notified the violation. He's removing stone. That's where the proposed parking stone. He knows the stone has to go. So I think the attorney represents the door to the north, and I think him and the vet, they don't get along. So SWIP problem question, that's part of the plan, is the SWIP is part of the construction plans. There's 3 sheets to it. When they build, they put fence and everything, blanket everything, see everything. The existing mounding and fence that's there now, I'm not sure why the doctor brought that there, other than I think to block the drainage that was coming off the parking lot to the north. So that lot to the north has no detention, has no water quality, drains right to his lot. So they added curbing with an outlet to the doctor's lot. There's a difference in elevation between these lots, feet. So he has problems with water from the Papa John's and all those runs because there's no detention on their lot right now. So we are putting a divergence well around the back of his lot and detaining about 75% of the improvements in the existing lot and a bioretention and to provide retention and water quality to make stormwater and ensuring satisfied. The rear does not get detained, but we over detain the front. So the rear goes off into the grass, goes south, and gets routed as it's going now. Papa John's lots gets routed around into. So the runoff, our runoff, none of it has runoff. There's no detention on any of these lots. All, none of them. That's how they were built 20 years. I think that's all the questions. I think you have.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I got.
You have 5 minutes for final rebuttal.
Thank you. I also, in the plans that have been submitted, there's a sheet that is lettered or numbered C303, and that's in the design plan submitted by the petitioner. In 2 areas, this diagram shows a sidewalk to nowhere, 2 sidewalks to nowhere to be particular. There's a north-south sidewalk that is located immediately to the east of the drive lane, and that goes to approximately the middle of the existing building and stops, just stops in the middle of the property. And also there's a sidewalk that runs east and west, and it also stops in the middle of nowhere. The east-west sidewalk, and if it's helpful, I can give you the diagram because I've highlighted exactly where it's located that I'm talking about. And the proposed sidewalk is only 4 foot wide. I question if that's sufficient. I don't believe that's what's required by code. And then also, petitioner mentioned a drive easement, a drive lane that runs north-south. I want to point out that that drive lane is only 22 feet wide. On the property to the north, it's 30 feet wide, which is in excess of what's required by the code. And the north-south drive lane must be widened to a minimum of 25 feet to provide safe flow of traffic. And if I may, I'll gladly give you my copy where I've highlighted what I've referred to as the 2 sidewalks to nowhere. If the purpose of the sidewalks is to promote pedestrian travel, they won't do it as submitted.
You want me to address those sidewalks or not?
We'll get there. Are you good? Okay. We'll close our staff will allow you time for your comments.
Lots to digest there. Staff we were favorable of this petition. It's a 50% expansion, basically doubling the expansion. He originally wanted to keep the lots separate, and it would have been a development on his second lot that he owned. Staff recommended that they plat those as one lot since they're both under the same ownership. At that time, it was legal, non-conforming. We're basically just allowing them to continue the line, the front line of their building. We don't want this building offset. With this, they are going through a commercial site plan review process right now. That includes working with engineering and stormwater. We have notified them that the gravel needs to be removed. Whether or not they continue to go through with their commercial site plan, if for some reason it got derailed, they would need to remove that gravel. What else? Is there any other questions that you might have for staff regarding this petition?
I will, but I'll close the public hearing and then we'll go through board questions if that works. Public hearing, small. Any questions?
No, I'm good.
Mr. King?
All right, so the parking in the front yard, that Gabe, that's what, I mean, what are we being asked to allow? I mean, to keep the gravel or?
No, the gravel will be paved. Basically, if you look in your staff report for this petition, they have existing parking with their building that they have right now. They are doing a expansion of that building and they would like to continue that parking. Right now, they're two separate lots. Planning staff is asking them to combine them through a plat. Anytime you develop a building in Greenwood, we do require that the lot becomes platted. Right now, it's meets and bounds. They're just looking to continue their parking on that north property there.
That way. It's variance because it's offside. And so, I mean, I guess also then, because there's question of the age of the building and whether it's conforming because it's, I mean, 30 years old. It's been there for as long as I can remember. I mean, some of the concerns demonstrated, Bob, I think because it goes before the UDO, doesn't it?
It's grandfather.
It's grandfather.
It's grandfather. Precedes the change.
The words are hard, but yeah. So see the issue there necessarily. But if the commercial site plan gets tanked, then right, none of this matters, right?
Yeah, they're working through their commercial site plan with staff right now. And simultaneously, they're also working on the plat for this property.
It's like stormwater.
There would
Shut it
be,
down.
yeah, with the commercial site plan, they will have to do some things to mitigate stormwater, as the petitioner had mentioned. That's something we're working with them right now through this process. This is related to the lot that is going to become a part of their existing lot, continuing the building line and continuing the parking that is grandfathered from a previous approval.
So in essence, anything regarding stormwater and all that, it really isn't a Board of Zoning Appeals issue. It's more of the design with the construction and the part that other operations would handle.
Correct. Yes, there's a couple other boards that would handle it. We have variances, other things that if they wanted to propose a waiver would go to Board of Public Works and Safety or the Stormwater Board. This is for the location of the parking and the building setback. Again, they're requesting to be back further than our maximum setback. So it would be in line with-
Even with the existing building.
even
So-
with the building that they currently have standing, correct?
So we would need to make a condition to go through the commercial, because it's going to go through the commercial site plan.
It has to
It
be-
currently is going through the commercial site plan. They will need to have their current site plan that they've been working on or would like to pursue. These are the variances they are requesting. They've already filed the petition for that, and there would be no need to place a condition on it because it is something that we are already having them do without any condition.
I do have a question for petitioner. The whole idea of adding on to what would be the front of the building and going east into the current parking lot, I've got to assume that's your front entry now. You have that inside building set up in a way that is functional.
Yeah.
You're wanting to add on so that expansion makes like sense of a layout without having to redo the entire
Correct.
existing interior.
I think they want to keep the main entrance that they have, but add a second. I mean, I think they're gonna move their main entrance to the new building, have a new reception area, but they need more examining rooms and X-ray rooms. And all that. That's why they want to keep it on.
Okay, and this, I mean, this is a lot that would have a front-facing business if it were to remain standalone and a business was put on it, correct?
Yeah, this
It
was a
just wouldn't necessarily
standalone
sit
lot.
back as far.
Exactly. Due to it being on two different lots, there are different considerations, different buffering between the two properties, setbacks, et cetera. That would come into play. To avoid running into some of those issues, we'd ask them to plat this as one lot. It was going to be on two different lots with zero setback between them because it was one building spanning over two lots. The two lots are in oddly enough different zones. They both allow for the vet to operate there, but those zones had buffering and et cetera. So it would have been easier to plat it as one property, have both of them have a finalized recorded plat in our system. And we worked with the petitioner to kind of get to where we are now.
Okay. I have nothing further. I mean, I think the owner to the south has not, we haven't heard anything from the owner to the south of concerns.
No, staff.
I will take a motion to admit all the evidence in the records.
Chairman, I move that we admit all the evidence presented in regard to this matter, including the notices, receipts, maps, photographs, written documents, petitioner's application and attachments, petitioner's detailed statement of reasons, the staff report prepared by the planning department, certified copies of the unified development ordinance and comprehensive plan, testimony of the petitioner, sitting fighting staff, and any remonstrators, and all other exhibits presented, be they oral or written, for consideration by this board in regard to this petition, and to include the testimony of those present this evening.
Motion by Mr. Peters, second by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. I will take a motion on request number 1 to increase the maximum front setback to 141 feet.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve this request with no conditions.
Motion by Mr. King, second by Mr. Moll. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. Motion for request number 2 to allow parking in a front yard.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve this with no conditions.
Motion by Mr. King, second by Mr. Moll. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. Take a motion to direct the Corporation's Council to draft written findings of fact.
Mr. Chairman, having considered the statutory criteria, and move that we direct the Corporation's Council Office to draft written findings of fact regarding our decision on the variance request presented in various petition number BZA 2023-013. Said findings specifically incorporate the staff report and evidence submitted into records for consideration and adoption by the Board of Zoning Appeals as our final decision and final action regarding this petition at our next meeting.
Motion by Mr. Knoll, second by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 4-0. We have no more new business.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any new business from the floor? Seeing none, any announcements?
Nope, we will have an agenda for next week, and we also continue something next week, so. Next week, I'll say, for 2 weeks.
Yep. Continue to roll on.
Next week, and 2 weeks from-
There you go. Mr. Foster?
Nothing from Corporation Council.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. King. We are adjourned. Stop the recording.